Alright guys, so today I'm going to show you how to do a CVT fluid exchange on your Nissan Juke or any other Nissan that uses this transmission, which is a CVT. So a few things to keep in mind when you're doing this. What we're going to be doing is basically a drain and fill. You can call it a CVT fluid service if you'd like. But in order to get all of the CVT fluid out, you have to dump out the torque converter, which involves removing the transmission. So you can either do this a couple of times, or you can just do it this once and every 30,000 miles keep doing it so that most of the fluid gets swapped out. The factory capacity is a little over 8 quarts if I recall correctly. We're going to be changing 5 of those quarts when you do this approximately. So things you're going to need. You're going to need genuine Nissan CVT fluid, none of that aftermarket stuff. You don't want to be mixing the 2 different kinds of fluid. You want to stick with what's in there. This is Nissan NS2. And the reason I say you don't want to do this drain and fill over and over again is these are $20 a quart. If you can find them on eBay for cheaper, cool. Still going to only be $1 or something cheaper each. So you are going to need 5 quarts of this at a minimum. You're also going to need a drain pan that actually reads in quarts. There's little markers on the side of this one that actually tells you how many quarts have drained out. This is actually to save time in this process, and I'll show you why in a second. You're also going to want some sort of latex or rubber gloves. This Nissan CVT fluid is pretty nasty stuff. If you have sensitive skin, it can irritate and give you a chemical burn. So some nice gloves are awesome. All in all, these 2 things right here, it's 20 bucks for a big case of these. You can go to Home Depot and get a small case for like 5 bucks, and this costs like 3. You also need an assorted selection of metric wrenches. The drain plug is usually a 19mm, but if for some reason yours is different, you want to have other sizes available. And of course, you'll need a jack and jack stands. So we are under the car now. If you look right here, dead ahead, this piece right here, that is the drain plug for the transmission. So what you're going to want to do is get your hand underneath that. Then you're going to want to take your wrench. You're going to want to loosen that. Once you crack it loose by hand, you should be able to just unscrew it. You don't want to drop the drain plug into the pan. So you'll see fluid drip and then just pull it. The fluid will slowly drip out like it is. As you can see, that's pretty dark. So you're just going to want to sit and wait for that to finish draining out. And when it starts dripping, you're pretty much good to go. Okay, now that we have the fluid dripping out, we can go ahead and put the drain plug back in. And then we're going to go ahead and just tighten that up. Don't over tighten it. It is just a threaded piece of sheet metal. You want to grab a rag of some kind. Wipe everything down. Now for the time saver. Our hand shows how much fluid came out. And exactly 5 quarts came out of here. I'm going to show you why that saves us some time. So why does knowing how much fluid came out save you time? Well, you know that the proper amount of fluid was in the vehicle when you drained it, right? So if you drain it out and then you put in exactly what came out, realistically, it should have the exact amount of fluid back in it that it's supposed to have. Why does that save time? In order to properly check the fluid level on these Nissan CVTs, you actually need to warm the transmission up to 115 degrees. Now, it doesn't sound very warm, but if you let it sit here and idle because you're unsure if you put the right amount of fluid in, that could take a good half hour to do, so it saves you a half hour. Also, if you drain that out and you put too little fluid back in, well, then you run the risk of damaging the transmission when you take it for the test drive to warm the transmission up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the dipstick from the tube. We're going to fill the transmission with 5 quarts of fluid. We're going to take it for a quick little drive so it warms up, park it on a level surface, and then check our fluid level. There's also a trick for this dipstick, and I'll show you that in a second. Now I said there was a trick for this dipstick. The trick is to get yourself a pick with some sort of hook on it or a 90-degree twist on it. Basically, there's a tab. You need to stick the pick through the hole to push the tab inward. When the tab is pushed in, you can then pull the dipstick up. Now the dipstick is going to twist hard to the right. That is normal, it's supposed to do that. So we're going to go ahead and just pull this clean out. Now you can struggle with pouring it into the small hole, or you can go out and get one of these funnels. It's long, it's got a narrow bottom. It actually fits perfectly into the tube for the CVT fluid. Now we're going to take our 5 quarts exactly. We're going to pour them in. Alright, so I've got all 5 quarts in there. We're going to go ahead and just pull the funnel out. Now, a little trick to make it easier for you to check your fluids so you don't have to use a pick every time to get this out is when you put this back in, after you've wiped it off, obviously, you're going to want to slide it in, and the way it twists it out at the 90-degree angle, just push it in so it's past the O-ring, and kind of just leave it like that. For the short time that you're going to be driving it around, it's not going to go anywhere, and it also makes it extremely easy for you to just pop it back out and check the fluid. Now, before you start driving the car, you're going to want to turn it on, and you're going to want to check the fluid to make sure it's at least reading on the dipstick. The last thing you want to do is start driving around with not enough fluid in the vehicle. So after you check your dipstick level and make sure it's in the crosshatch like it's supposed to be, add fluid if necessary, drain a tiny bit of fluid if necessary. You're pretty much good to go. I recommend doing the CVT fluid exchange every 30,000 miles. If you're over 50,000 miles, I don't recommend changing the fluid at all, just because it's going to be so worn in. You don't want to mix the really old fluid with the new fluid, and it's going to create a kind of uneven viscosity in the transmission, so it's kind of a leave it thing, unless you want to do several of these drain and fills to try to get everything out as you can. Like I said, $20 a quart. That is your call. As always, make sure you consult your local Nissan dealership to make sure that you get the appropriate fluid, and make sure you're getting the appropriate amount of fluid. And if you're unsure if you can do this successfully, it's a $2,000 transmission plus labor. Best to leave it to professionals if you don't think you can do it. So make sure you share this around to your Nissan Juke pages, or if you have a CVT, to wherever you share your CVT information. Make sure you hit that like button down the bottom, and also remember, subscribe to YouTube account. You're supposed to do that. Subscribe. Do it. See you guys later.